This is Barry Zalma speaking for Claims School Incorporated's blog, Zalma on Insurance. Today we're going to talk about why insurance policy conditions must be applied and why a roof damage insurance dispute was resolved by the district court. Roof damage insurance disputes are common. April Point South Property Owners Association claimed that the insurer, Third Coast Insurance Company, owes over $1.8 million to repair hailstorm damage to 31 separate buildings in a condominium project. Third Coast investigated the claim and denied coverage. April Point disputed the denial, and both parties retained adjusters and experts, and after the parties failed to reach resolution, April Point sued. In April Point South Property Owners Association versus Third Coast Insurance, a July 15, 2024 decision of the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas, the United States District Court resolved competing motions for summary judgment. First, Third Coast did not pay anything under the policy in the year after the storm damage, and April Point presented evidence that Third Coast's coverage denial deprived it of the funds it needed to make the repairs. Although April Point may recover on a replacement cost value despite the one-year deadline contained in the policy, subject to the limitations discussed by the court, April Point must make the repairs in order to obtain coverage on a replacement cost basis. It can collect actual cash value and then use that actual cash value payment to make the repairs. Third Coast also argued that April Point can recover no more than the actual cash value, ACV, of the repairs because the damaged roofs are over 15 years old, and the policy stated that any damage to existing roof coverings that have been in place for more than 15 years and one day will only be valued at ACV. April Point asserts that it can show that at least 2 roofs were replaced within 15 years before the date of the loss, and therefore they are entitled, at least for those 2 roofs, to obtain replacement cost value, RCV. Third Coast responded that while it does not dispute the 4,400 square feet of damaged roofs are less than 15 years old, April Point had not shown that the other 186,400 square feet of the roofs are under 15 years old, and the court agreed. Then there's the issue of coverage for domestic cosmetic damage. The policy excludes payments for cosmetic loss or damage, which it defines as, quote, damage that alters only the physical appearance of any such item but does not result in the failure of the items to perform its intended function for the remainder of the original useful life. The parties agreed that the cosmetic work is not covered, and April Point may not seek cosmetic damages to replace dented but functional parts of the property. The policy provision limiting Third Coast's obligation to pay repair costs to the roofs at the prices available at the date of loss was unambiguous. Third Coast is entitled to summary judgment limiting the damages to the costs of repair as of the date of the place of loss and not inflated prices available at the date of the decision. Then there was an exclusion in the policy for general contractor overhead and profit. An interesting exclusion, but one that was clear and unambiguous. The Third Coast insurance policy excludes recovery of, quote, general contractor overhead and profit, close quote, for the, quote, roof system or any component thereof, close quote. Since neither party has submitted or pointed to evidence to the trial court as to whether the roof systems or any component thereof includes HVAC units or lattice work, the court denied summary judgment because while the policy excludes recovery for the general contractor's overhead and profit for the roof system or any component thereof, the present record presented to the trial judge did not show what costs or work this policy language excluded. And so that part of the motion was rejected. The insurance policy also states that Third Coast, quote, will not pay for loss to covered property due to any diminution in value, close quote. April Point, therefore, may not recover damages for diminution of market value based on the appearance of the roofs after repair as opposed to replacement. Finally, the insured sought extra-contractual damages. The court noted that Texas law imposes on insurers a common law duty to deal fairly and in good faith with the insured in the processing and payment of claims. However, the record showed that Third Coast inspector initially reported evidence of hail damage to the property and recommended payment of the claim, and after the initial investigation, Third Coast brought in independent engineering and weather consultants who disagreed with the inspector's determination. April Point has not submitted or pointed to evidence that these consultants made their findings in an unobjective or unfair manner. A bona fide controversy is sufficient reason for failure of an insurer to make a prompt payment of a loss claim. The evidence shows a bona fide controversy between the various experts as to whether the damage was covered, precluding liability for bad faith, so the extra-contractual claims were dismissed. In conclusion, Third Coast motion for partial summary judgment was granted to limit recovery to the actual cash value for roofs except for the 4,400 square feet that were less than 15 years old, and to the cost of repair as to the date of loss, and to exclude coverage for diminution of value and repair of cosmetic damage. The court also granted summary judgment on the extra-contractual claims. Third Coast motion was denied as to the work covered by the general contractor overhead and profit provision. The court granted summary judgment that the policy excluded coverage for cosmetic damage and diminution in value, and the remaining issues will be resolved either by trial or further motions for summary judgment. In my opinion, insurance policies that contain provisions that are clear and unambiguous will and should always be affirmed and applied by a trial court. This court worked for fairness, applying some of the insured's arguments in its favor and applied some of the insurer's position in its favor. Importantly, it rejected the bad faith claim because the insurer's position was fairly debatable and reasonable. This video was adapted from my blog, Zalma on Insurance, which is available free to anyone who clicks on the URL zalma.com/blog. You can subscribe to the blog and you'll receive notice of every blog posting, usually 5 or 6 a week. And you will also have access to the more than 4,800 blog postings. You can also subscribe to the videos on YouTube and rumble.com. They're both free. And if you do, I'd appreciate it if you click on the like button on YouTube and the thumbs up button on rumble.com. And if you're interested in further detail about insurance, insurance claims, insurance fraud, and insurance law, please consider, for a very small fee, subscribing to my Substack publications. Thank you for your attention.